It is the 7th day of August 2023. A very good evening to you from wherever you're watching us. Welcome to KETV Prime Team News. These are our top stories tonight. Tough times ahead for Kenyans as petition challenging Finance Act 2023 set to be heard in September. Bipartisan talks to begin on Wednesday amidst a back and forth on the areas to be addressed between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. President Ruto launches roads and water projects in his third day of Central Region tour. And no handshake. Mount Kenya Kwanza leaders maintain that they will not be moved by Azimio threats. Alright, Sammy OKELLO is our sign language interpreter tonight. My name is Anno Dida and you're live on our social media platforms at KETV_Kenya, that is on Facebook and YouTube. And later on, we will be having an interview with Professor Alfredo Menya. We'll be talking about the housing sector after the implementation of the 1.5 housing levy. So stay tuned for that interview. Let's get started. Now, the hearing of the case barring the Finance Act 2023 from implementation presented by Busia Senator Okello and other petitioners commenced today, where the defendants and complainants submitted the documents for review. According to the three-judge bench led by Judge David Majanja, Christine Mioli, and Lawrence Mugambi, the case will be reviewed on September 13 and 14th to give court time to go through the evidence submitted.
Petition.
The Finance Act 2023 case hearing will commence on September 13th and 14th. The ruling was made by Judge David Majanja today, being the first hearing.
What we have stated in the affidavits are factual and we produce the evidence. So these are matters for the court to look at when we do the substantive arguments, and the court will be able to make a decision as regards whatever planning that the parties wish to base on those documents. We also informed that the amended petition has been amended again, and we really do not know what the second amendment is all about, and therefore we need to see it even before we can deal with it.
The three-judge bench led by Judge David Majanja, Christine Meoli, and Lawrence Mugambi denied Busia Senator Okello request to cross-examine National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula and his Senate counterpart Amason Kingi about their declarations questioning the legitimacy of the controversial statute in his appeal, claiming that the National Assembly enacted it without consulting the Senate.
We need a fair trial and we need an equality of arms in this court. The ruling I've made is really not in my favor. It's prejudicial to my case if those affidavits remain on record and the authors cannot be cross-examined on them. They have made averments which are totally false and constitute perjury on this court. They have manufactured documents and we want to put their feet to the fire.
Mr. Omtata, we have made a ruling.
I appreciate my lord, but I think if we go in that direction, we are not serving justice.
Meanwhile, despite the Court of Appeal judgment, one of the petitioners in the case, which is the Law Society of Kenya, maintained that the Act application is unconstitutional. LSK has pleaded to the court to prevent government agencies, specifically the Kenya Revenue Authority KRA, from collecting taxes provided by the legislation, suggesting that Kenyans are already overtaxed.
In the budget itself, we have identified a lot of theft. What we believe is theft, or open theft by, at this place I would think is the people in the treasury, who are fixing things within the budget for them to steal, and it runs into hundreds of billions of shillings. So we are going to bring out all those issues.
The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority EPRA Director General Daniel Kiptoo has been asked to appear before the High Court to give an explanation why he should not be held in contempt for disobeying court directive. According to petitioner Okiya Omtata, Kiptoo went on to raise petroleum rates by 8% after the court granted an order banning any rise on July 10. Edward Nyamo, KUTV.
Now, bipartisan talks between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio are expected to begin on Wednesday at the Bomas of Kenya. National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah has put the record straight that the Kenya Kwanza Alliance will not accept any other requests from Azimio and that they will only prioritize the 5 proposals by President William Ruto. Salma Swaleh with more.
National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah has announced that Wednesday is the day and the Bomas of Kenya is the venue for the bipartisan talks between the two warring political functions of Kenya Kwanza and Azimio.
Na leo Mheshimiwa Rais asubuhi nimeongea na Mheshimiwa former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka na tumekubaliana Wednesday saa 5:30 tutakutana pale Bomas, sio kwa hoteli. Niliwaambia hakuna chai na hakuna pesa ya kununua chai na hakuna allowance. Tutapatana hapo Bomas, tukae chini tuongee.
Ichung'wah has taken a strong stance against Azimio, stating that they will not accept any other requests apart from the proposals that have been agreed upon by both sides. These proposals raised by the Azimio One Kenya coalition include the cost of living, audit of the 2022 presidential election results, reconstitution of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC and related issues, measures to prevent interference with political parties, unfinished constitutional matters including issues of governance, oversight and checks and balances, and the matter of boundary delimitation.
Na tuliwaambia jana, sisi tuko tayari kuongea mambo yanayohusu mwananchi wa kawaida. Mambo ya kibinafsi, mambo ya kugawa mamlaka, mambo ya nusu mkate, mambo ya handshake, hayo hayako kwa meza ya sisi kuongea na wale marafiki zetu.
Roads and Transport Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen has stated that the infrastructure sector has been negatively impacted during the protest by Azimio, calling for peace to be given priority in the upcoming talks.
We want an assurance as a Ministry of Roads ya kwamba wanasiasa wote, Kimani Ichung'wah akiwa majority leader, akienda kukutana na marafiki wake, condition number 1 wajiandikishe ni kwamba hakuna infrastructure itachomwa tena na barabara itachomwa matires kwa sababu hatuna pesa ya wananchi kuwaste.
Kenyans are now anticipating the round 2 of bipartisan talks in order to determine whether the two warring political divides will solve their differences. Salma Swaleh, KUTV.
All right, President William Ruto has reiterated the government's hard stance against politics of power sharing. Speaking during a public rally in Nyeri County, President Ruto and his top allies blasted the opposition leaders, headed by Azimio leader Raila Odinga, over push for handshake, underscoring that the opposition's long-term blackmail into sharing power with the past regimes would prove futile in Kenya Kwanza government.
President William Ruto has remained relentless in his stance against handshake with opposition leader Raila Odinga, even as anxiety continues to bite among Kenya Kwanza and Azimio leaders.
Walikoroga Moi mpaka wakapata cooperation. Wakakuja wakasumbua Kibaki mpaka wakapata nusu mkate. Wakakuja wakaangaisha Uhuru mpaka wakahama na handshake. Hii ya mahasla hakuna handshake, hakuna nusu mkate. Hii maneno ya mazungumzo mimi kwa roho yangu hata sitaki. Mimi hata ningesema tuachane na mazungumzo.
The head of state noted that the country needs a stable and peaceful political environment to revitalize its economy, warning that the government will remain vigilant towards violence and disruption of businesses.
Pia tukubaliane mambo ya vita na fujo na kuharibu mali na kuharibu maisha biashara ya watu. Pia na hiyo tukubaliane tukomeshe katika taifa letu la Kenya.
That Raila Odinga and his team must denounce violence as a way of sorting political issues in this country. Akakuja akatuangaisha. Sasa huyu William Ruto, rais wetu, ni mtu ya kuziwa uoga. Si hii ni chuma ya zamani. Na mimi niko hapo.
This comes on the back of Azimio's ultimatum regarding the timeline and agenda of the planned talks.
Basi sisi tuwe tayari kujua kwamba serikali ni hii na wale wengine waache mchezo, uchaguzi ulikwisha mwaka jana.
Mambo ya kibinafsi, mambo ya kugawa mamlaka, mambo ya nusu mkate, mambo ya handshake, hayo hayako kwa meza ya sisi kuongea na wale marafiki zetu.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua used the opportunity to sell Kenya Kwanza's policies, comparing President Ruto's reign with that of the third president of Kenya, Mwai Kibaki.
Na rais wetu, ile mpango umechukua, ile laini mimi naona wewe unapitia, ni ile ya mzee Mwai Kibaki, ya kupanga uchumi. Na wewe rais, ukifuata hiyo rais njia ya Mwai Kibaki, hao watu ya udhaya watakupenda milele. Na hiyo njia ya rais Mwai Kibaki ndio njia ya kutengeneza Kenya.
Even as the government and opposition parties prepare to engage in what they term as talks to unite the country, Kenyans are still to see whether this will ultimately solve the prevailing economic conditions and the high cost of living. Joseph Oyomo, KUTV.
President William Ruto has launched both stalled and new development projects in his third day of visiting the central region. Ruto has commissioned the Chamara-Rutume Road and also launched a water project in Tetu and Othaya areas. The president has said that the government will first complete the stalled roads before launching the construction of new ones, as Joseph Kess reports.
Kariara, Mukurweni, Tetu, Othaya are among the Nyeri County regions that President Ruto toured today in his itinerary of launching development projects in the region. President William Ruto, who interacted with the residents, has given an assurance that government will not launch the construction of new roads until it completes the construction of roads which are planned before.
Kabla ya sisi kuanzisha barabara ingine mpya, hizo barabara zote ambazo tulikuwa tumeanzisha tutazitengeneza, tutazikamilisha ndani ya miaka miwili, ndio tuanze zile barabara zingine baadaye. Hii yenu tunakamilisha. Neguo, tunaelewana?
The president has thence assured Nyeri residents that the road network between Mukurweni to Kiharu, Kimathi to Rutune, extending to Mehoti, passing through Ishawara to Maseno, and finally Kiriti, will be complete in 1 year.
So leo tumekuja hii barabara yenu. Mnajua hii barabara inaunganisha nyinyi na watu wa Kiharu hapa chini pale Kimathi. Si namna hiyo? Kutoka hapa chini Rotune tunataka kusukuma hiyo barabara mpaka ifike Kimathi. Alafu ikuje hapa kwenu. Si ndio?
Tutahakikisha barabara zote zenye ziko kwa constituency hii ikiwa pamoja na hii county imemalizwa.
President Ruto has also launched water projects in Tetu, stating that the government will embark on constructing the Hura Dam that will pump water to Tetu, Mukurweni and Othaya, among other parts of Nyeri County. Karimenu Dam in Narumoro is also set to be constructed to supply locals with sufficient water. President Ruto also says that government will start a special economic zone in Sagana, as well as invest 5 billion shillings in the establishment of a Del Monte company, projects that are targeted to provide jobs for 50,000 youths. President Ruto's visit to the central Kenya region kicked off on Saturday and is set to culminate on Wednesday. Joseph Kess, KUTV.
All right, 13 minutes past the top of the hour. We are taking a very fast short break at this point. Of course, we are coming back with an interview on the state of the housing sector in the country. Stay with us.
Focus on Health is a show that creates awareness on matters health and informs you on various diseases, their causes, treatment, prevention, coping, and support. So join me, Bwari Michelle, every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. only on KUTV. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at KUTV Focus on Health on Facebook and also on YouTube, and Health Focus on Instagram, because your health is your wealth. Stay safe and stay healthy.
what are some of the ways through which you can develop these skills so that you are comfortably fitting into the job?
You have to put yourself in positions where you are uncomfortable in the sense that you are not clear about what to do.
Because I used to work a corporate job before. So when I left, I happened to visit someone's farm around this area.
So this project is called Security Breach Detector and Readiness Familiarize. It is meant to be used to detect, detonate explosive.
We'll tackle all the tough issues, discuss all the weird moments, and hopefully share a few laughs along the way.
Kutoka kuwa jamii ya kuhamahama na sasa kujumuisha kilimo katika mitindo yao ya maisha. Kwenye toleo la kaunti ya Narok, hii ni Boresha Kilimo, kwani afya bora ni kilimo bora.
Kwani kilimo ndicho huboresha maisha.
Kipindi hewani ni mitindo ya kipwani. Kama ilivyo kipindi hiki kinahusu nyimbo za taarab, chakacha, midwara, midundiko, bila kusahau mapishi. Ambao ndio uti wa mgongo wa pwani ya Afrika Mashariki.
Jamani swahibu zangu mliopo maskani, hatuonani wenzangu, najua mwanitamani.
Hapa KUTV, nahodha mwendesha chombo cha baharini, yani ua linalunukia na kuvutia waridi tamu.
Just that short. Welcome back. You're watching KETV Primetime News, and in studio we are joined by, because I have Sammy OKELLO, we are joined by Professor Alfred Omenya, who is an urban planning and housing expert. We want to talk about the Kenya's housing sector after the implementation of the, of course, 1.5 housing levy. Karibu sana to our studios once again.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah.
All right.
Nice to be here.
We are glad to have you back. Now, I want us to just start this with, I know you're someone in the housing sector a lot. You're an architect. So I want to know maybe what are some of the key challenges facing now the Kenya's housing sector, particularly in the urban areas?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is something that we've highlighted actually, that we have different housing challenges and housing problems, and if we segment them, we are on the extreme side. We don't even talk about it. We have homelessness. These are people with no houses and homes. They live on the streets and so on. Then we have what we call inadequate housing, and inadequate housing is really those living in slums and informal settlements. And then we actually have poor quality rental housing, and that is, your low income housing type. And then we actually have issues around affordability for the high income housing. So if you look at the segment, each have different challenges. Yeah, so you'll find that for the homeless, nobody even talks about them, because they really are sort of left to charitable organizations and churches to deal with. And then for the slums, you find that the issue is not the housing unit itself. It is the quality of environment that people live in. The issues there around lack of water, lack of sanitation, environments that are not healthy for people to live in, lack of access, lack of social amenities like schools, health facilities, and so on. And that is the biggest challenge that we have, because if you look at your urban areas, about nationally, you're looking at about 60% of all our urban areas, people living in those conditions. If you look at that in absolute terms, you're really looking at almost 20 million Kenyans in that sort of space. And then if you come to major towns like Nairobi, it's even higher. You're looking at almost 70-something% of people in those sort of conditions. Yes, and then of course now when you look at low-income housing, I think in this good examples in these areas, I really like your old council housing that is quite run down. They're not slums per se, but they're totally run down. And then you see emerging estates. Good examples in Nairobi would be the famous Pipeline, or places like Kumoja, Kayole, Zimmerman, and so on. You find that these are actually housing that people pay for. They've been built, but they're not very safe. Occasionally we hear buildings collapsing in those sort of places. There is some sort of infrastructure, but they're not really, they're not appropriate housing. And then now when you shift the challenge to let's say people who are building for themselves, or people living in flats in slightly more affluent places, then you find the problem reverses. It is not an issue of the quality of the house anymore. It becomes an issue of affordability of those houses. For example, I mean, if I may give an example, and that's a problem in the mortgage market. If I may give an example, as somebody living in say Hurlingham in Nairobi, you'd find that this person pays say 70,000 rent, but if they decide to own this particular house, their mortgage payments per month for a 20-year mortgage will be something like 300,000. So they can't afford. That's the interesting thing, that although they're wealthy, but they actually can't afford. And that's I'm saying that the Kenyan housing problem is segmented. It is not the same problem. Sometimes it's poor quality rental, sometimes a slum and a slum upgrading situation, sometimes it's expensive mortgages and the mortgage market, sometimes it's actually even the price of the houses themselves. Yeah, so there are very many different issues to actually look at when you're looking at the housing challenge, and of course how to deal with it.
So which one is better, renting or mortgage?
It's actually very, very interesting because again, before we even get into the situation, whether it's better to own or do a mortgage, you'll find that Kenya is also a very bizarre place compared to other countries globally. In many countries, you find people who stay in slums and informal settlements don't rent. They're typically people, they own. That's the interesting thing. The poor people, they organize themselves, they get places where it's actually legal to build, and they build there. That is the situation in countries like South Africa, our peers, even in Egypt, Nigeria. That's the same situation in Brazil, it's the same situation in India and so on. But Kenya is very interesting because poor people living in informal settlements actually rent. They don't own. Yeah, so you have slumlords, whom they actually pay for, they actually pay, and these people don't provide quality housing. The reason why this is important at that very, very low level of renting is that we don't have a mechanism of forcing these slumlords to provide good quality housing. So in the first instance, that's what I'm saying, even before we look at whether it's good to rent or to own, what you're saying is that the bottom line is that we need good quality and proper housing. Whether is a house you own or is a house you rent. But in our situation is that we have very poor quality housing, which we rent. So I mean, all those examples I gave, in the slums we rent, amongst low-income owners, dwellers, you also rent. Whether the Umojas I was talking about, the pipelines and so on, majority of those people who are in there are actually renting. Yes, and then of course we have the ownership bit. Yes, so in Kenya we have to deal with two issues. Of course, ideally it is good to own. It is actually better to own in the sense that you are actually investing, you are developing an asset and so on. You have a bigger responsibility over the house that you actually live in, and you can invest in it gradually. But like I've said, what has also happened in Kenya now is that it's ridiculously expensive to own. Yeah, and these are the issues that we actually have to talk about. And it doesn't matter whether you're paying a mortgage. Like that example I give. Let me give some indications. If you get a mortgage of 5 million, so that'll be a 5 million house, which is basically the type of house we're talking about in Moja, 2 bedrooms and so on. Your mortgage payments is going to be about 60,000 Kenya shillings per month for 20 years. And the rent payment in that same place is going to be about 10,000. So it's extremely expensive to own across board, whether you're looking at slums, whether you're looking at that low income housing, whether you're looking at a house in Karen, a house that you're paying for. Let's look at Karen on the other extreme end. I mean, if you're doing if you buy a house worth 100 million, your mortgage over 20 years is going to be close to $1 million actually, and the rents that you'll be paying for that to be what, maybe about 20,000 or thereabout. Yes, so we have this disconnection between ownership and renting, and it's across board. Even if you're building your own house. You go outside in, say, Zimmerman, Kitengela, all these other places. You buy yourself a piece of land, a small piece of land that is, 50 by 100 will cost you anything between, 2 million to 3 million. And then you proceed to put, say, a 3-bedroom house in that same place. It costs you about, some 6 million thereabout. You find your overall investment in this is actually about 8 million. And if you try to rent that in the market, you'll be lucky to get 30,000 per month, which means that in fact, if God bequeathed you 3 lifetimes, you will not get your return on investment. Yes, so in Kenya, we actually have this extremely high cost of owning, whether through mortgage or through actual self-construction. And renting is not necessarily cheaper. It's only cheaper in comparison with ownership. But the rents that people pay in Kenya are still relatively high. Because again, what's the logic behind rental? We've always argued international best practice is that people should actually spend about 25% of their income on rents. Kenyans on average spend about 50,000 of their income on rent, which is quite high. It means that if you are earning 100,000, you should not spend more than 25,000 for renting. If you're earning 30,000, you should not spend more than 7,500 for renting. But you find that if you get in the market and you are this young graduate who's gotten out of college and you're earning 30,000-40,000, if you decide to go with that benchmark, you'll actually stay in a slum. Yeah, you can't afford somebody's 7 quarter outside there.
All right.
Yes. So the point I'm trying to make here is that housing in Kenya generally is expensive, whether you're renting or owning.
Yeah.
Of course, when you're owning, it's even more ridiculous in terms of the amount of money that you're actually investing in it. And that's partly one of the things that we've actually said, that look here, the best way of dealing with some of these challenges is to start, because it's relatively cheaper to own, is to start ensuring that what Kenyans own is actually of very good quality. Yeah, so give the current money that are actually paying for it. And then on the other hand, we need to put mechanisms in place that then ensure that if you want to build your own house, then you can build it for say a quarter of what you're spending currently to build that house. Then it will actually become worth it in terms of an investment.
Yeah. Now, with the recent implementation of this 1.5% housing levy that is meant to help at funding the construction of housing in the country,
right.
How do you assess the potential impact of this initiative now in the country's housing sector?
Yes, I think the impact, whether you look at it, again, regardless of who's building houses, it's always a good thing to have houses. Because that's one of the things that stabilizes the market. I mean, if you've got good supply, then what basically happens is that initially rents come down, and then of course home ownership, also the cost of houses actually come down, which is good for everyone. And if you have a big player like government getting in and supplying a lot of stock, then what that does actually is that it starts dealing with, it starts correcting the speculative market that we're actually talking about. So it doesn't really matter for me. I don't really care who builds, as long as people are building. It actually helps stabilize. It helps stabilize the market, because you are able to slow down you're able to increase supply and sort of slow down the demand for housing. And then that way, since there'll be a lot of houses in the market, put simply, since there'll be a lot of houses in the market, then in fact, if you insist on charging high rents, your houses will be empty. Yeah. Then there's another positive thing that you can look at there. We call that downgrading, actually. Downgrading is simply people who should not be in a particular segment, going there because they can afford, and then displacing the people who are in that area. Yeah, for example, I mean, the people who stay in slums and informal settlements, then you find that if again these lower end of middle class have no houses, then they'll get to the slums. And when they get to the slums, they actually start paying slightly higher than the slum people, and then they displace people who should actually stay there in the first instance. And that happens throughout, so that your high-income guys come to middle-income housing, they disturb demand there, and they displace the people who are there. That's actually called downgrading. Downgrading is actually dealt with just simply through supply. If you have a lot of houses supplied, then why would, say, the low-income people, go to the slums, or why would the middle-income people come to get properties that were actually meant for the low income? So I look at that as a positive, really, in terms of the housing, of the housing fund, hoping that it'll actually deliver a lot of houses. Of course, the challenge still remains what we're actually having before.
Right.
That
Before we come to the challenges, Prof, I beg your pardon, let's take a very short break and then we'll come back now with the challenges. All right.
Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills in television production? Then welcome to Kenyatta University, where education meets innovation. KUTV, the premier university television station in Kenya, is now offering short courses in TV studio, field technical operations, and video editing. Through these courses, you will acquire hands-on skills on camera operations, media production, lighting techniques, audio-visual editing, and sound and visual control, and how to operate key equipment in modern TV control room. Enroll today at KUTV and discover your full potential in cutting-edge TV broadcasting. Graduates of these courses will receive professional certificates. For more information, visit our offices at KUTV Studios or call us on 020-870-4252 or 020-870-4255 or SMS us on 0739-110-544. KUTV, a new experience.
All right, welcome back. Before we went on that very short break, Prof was telling us about now the challenges that we might be facing with this 1.5% housing levy, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, now maybe you would just speak up from there.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think there are issues, of course. There were discussions about this 1.5 housing levy, and then of course, from a pragmatic point of view, we're saying, fine. I mean, if you're going to have the housing levy, the question we're asking is that will the housing levy actually deliver the houses in the first instance? Yes. So, and I think even before that, one of the questions that we're asking, and I think government responded to that very well, was what problem the housing levy intended to solve in the first instance. And earlier on, you remember, government wanted all of us to own houses, and we resisted quite a bit, saying that, look here, we only have one body and we can't pack it in so many houses. And the people who already owned houses, and the people who didn't need houses, the people who are just about to retire. There are quite a number of issues around that. And the way the government went around that was just to turn the housing thing into tax, so that then we are all contributing to this particular kitty. And I think that's where the problem is, because if you look at what the way government had envisaged to do this, you and I would have gone to government and demanded our houses. Yeah, because it was a saving towards housing or demanded our money back. So that earlier bit, the interesting thing with it was that although it was not going to solve the core housing problem, which is really these guys who live in inadequate housing, it was going to deliver houses in the sense that government was going to be accountable to actual individuals who gave government money as savings for a house. So it was more likely to produce houses. Now we have this scenario where the 1.5 thing, you can call it whatever you want, but it's a tax. That particular tax, where does it go to? What are the mechanisms of delivery of these houses, and what guarantees are there that actually the houses will be delivered in the first instance? You see, this fund is not ring-fenced. The fund is going, after the deductions have been done, this goes to consolidated fund, like any other fund, like any other government tax. So the question is, what guarantees that the entire 1.5% that has been collected by government, that will be about 6 billion every month, is used strictly for housing? Can government come in and say, okay, fine, we need to pay our Chinese loan, and this time we decide to use this particular amount? Is it ring-fenced? And what has been used to ring-fence it? It gets into consolidated funds, so it's not ring-fenced. There's no law that prevents government from using that fund for anything else that the government should actually be doing, in terms of using the fund. So that is part of the problem that we are seeing, that how sure are we that this will be used for housing, all of it, not 10% of it, not 20%, not 50% of it. Currently, there are absolutely no guarantees. And the second bit of an issue that we've actually had was actually about the institutional framework for delivery of these houses. Yes, the president himself said that this housing fund has been in the books, and they're just implementing it, actually using the Finance Act, which was partially true. Because we've always had a housing fund in our laws, but that housing fund is part of the National Housing Corporation Fund Act. So strictly speaking, if you have to look at this thing from the current existing institutional framework, then all this money that we are collecting should actually go to the National Housing Corporation. They're the ones who should apply it, because they're the one allowed by law to operationalize the fund. Otherwise, we need to create another fund. But the question is government likely to channel this money through the National Housing Corporation? The answer is no. In fact, I was in Kisumu, and I was quite excited because there are these adverts that are coming in like every 10, 20 minutes in the local stations, be it the Kisii one or the Western one or the Luo one, basically promoting Boma Yangu. So government really basically has an intention of applying this fund outside of the National Housing Corporation. Again, that has a number of pitfalls, in the sense that what are the measures, what are the accountability issues around this, what are the institutional frameworks that are used to apply this particular fund, and so on. And again, the reason why we're keen on this is that, this opens up the fund for abuse, it opens up the fund for use in all sorts of other different things and so on. I was with the Vice President in a function just 2 weeks ago, and in that particular function, the Vice President was actually asking the housing minister to build some teachers' houses in a school, and using the housing fund. He was making a promise around that. The question I was asking was that, is that one of the things that was envisaged for this particular fund? The question is, what can you use the fund for, and what aren't you allowed to use the fund for? Can you build anything, with this fund, and then it will still qualify as a housing fund? What type of houses? Can you use this fund, for example, to put infrastructure in slums? Can you use this fund to do dormitories in high school? Can you use this fund to build teachers' houses somewhere? Can you use this fund for police housing and so on? Currently, it is not clear. There is no law that sort of guides, the actual use of that particular fund. And the last bit of it is that this fund can actually be stopped in terms of its constitutionality and its illegality. Kenyans assume that simply because something is done or passes through parliament, then it's legal. It's not necessarily true. You can actually have an illegality for a very long time. A good case is CDF. Government is struggling now to sort of align CDF with the constitution and make it a legal issue. And how long has CDF been around? CDF predated the current constitution. It's been there for quite some time. And it's helped. We're not saying it has not helped. But that has not meant that it is actually illegal or in a constitutionally correct thing as it actually were. So of course somebody can go to court and stop the funds, just like CDF was stopped actually for a bit of time because its legality and its constitutionality was questioned. And this is something government should actually address. We've said this over and over again, time without number, that housing is a devolved function. It is actually a devolved function. Construction of houses. So the question comes in, when a function is devolved, what parts of that function can national government, take over again? Did the Constitution envisage that a devolved function of housing will actually be taken by government in such a literal sense as to actual building of houses? Of course, when government is putting up policies and putting up programs and so on, yes, that was envisaged by the Constitution for devolved functions. But when government is doing the actual, activities that were envisaged in the Constitution, the function of building houses, here we are talking about national government. Putting down houses. Is that what the Constitution envisaged? Did our Constitution envisage that housing would be devolved, yet national government will continue building them? And these are no-brainer. That is actually unconstitutional.
Prof, I want to ask you something in that line, and I'm told you're working on borrowed time. So this is my last question to you. We're talking about now the government now coming in to build these houses. The affordable housing project is a prominent goal in the Kenyan government right now.
Correct.
And Kenya, we are at 55.2 million population.
Right.
Now I want to know maybe how does this affordable housing initiative maybe now contributing to the overall development and maybe the well-being of the population?
Yes, that is actually something very positive. And of course, people normally think that we are against housing. Housing is very, very important, really, for any economy that is developing. For the simple reason that housing has a very long and complex value chain, and has huge potential for job creation, has huge potential for spurring industrialization, and so on. And of course, both the government and even the opposition before really did actually recognize this particular fact, because anything that you look at in housing, whether you're looking at basic things, energy consumption, whether you're looking at doors and windows made in those houses. I mean, you've got guys doing welding that side. Whether you look at the walling, you've got chaps working from quarries. You've got the transportation bits of value chain and so on, spurring the economy in terms of people actually investing in houses and money moving around and so on. So housing itself as a sector is normally a very nice sector to generally work with, because of those complexities of value chain and a whole lot of different job creation opportunities that it actually creates. So that is something that is positive, whichever way you actually look at it. In fact, it's normally better than even roads in terms of infrastructure and so on. Of course, you also spark quite a bit of local production and so on. But then, of course, this has to be harnessed in a more systematic way to optimize on it. Of course, if you're just building slums and informal settlements, you still sell iron sheets and you still sell nails and you still whatever. But if you look at it, part of the challenge that we actually have around is that, number one, we have a huge import content in our housing. And then with government taxes, again, you end up with the exact opposite, that now housing becomes a burden. I have to make a choice whether to take my children to school or to actually buy this particular house. And then on the other hand, we are not seeing incentives again for local production. So on one hand, what government is doing is is okay. We don't actually mind it. But government has gone quiet again on spurring that entire sector, because the truth of the matter is that government is not the one who create jobs, and it's not government's role to actually create jobs. And people have been building these houses, and we're saying, fine, can government use this to actually spur broader economic development by allowing private sector that has been building these houses build them, because they're very good at them. They're still employing people. They're still, improving that particular value chain. By encouraging our own local production of materials, by facilitating housing and so on. So you find that we are in a pretty interesting situation, that government themselves want to build houses because there's need for housing. Government understands that housing is an important economic issue. But then on the other hand, if you check taxes now, government has levied huge taxes on many things, on clinker, cement.
Yeah.
Kenya has one of the most expensive cement, in the entire region, in the entire continent. Power is extremely expensive and so on. So this actually has the reverse effect, that actually it discourages people to actually invest in housing, which in fact is what government should be encouraging in the first instance. So even as government, builds houses, they should also ensure that broader policies outside there, particularly the tax regime, is organized in a way that encourages investors, to put more money in housing as well.
Thank you so much, Prof. I'm being told that time is up, but I understand that we can continue this conversation later on, because now this is our program. It's called Money Monday, and we're glad to have you here with us tonight.
No, thank you, Anna.
All right,
always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Right.
You're taking another short break. Of course, you're coming back with more. Stay with us.
Lola ni programu inayokupa fursa ya kutizama video zozote pindi tu unapokuwa na nafasi. Hadithi za kukupa motisha, drama, maisha ya vyuo vikuu, teknolojia, masuala ya jamii, kuzuru maeneo tofauti, spoti, burudani na zaidi. Pata programu ya Lola sasa kwenye rununu yako kwa yote unayohitaji.
Adventures across the African continent.
See breathtaking wildlife, stunning landscapes,
and out of this world technology.
Meet incredible scientists
and learn fantastic facts.
Explore, discover, be amazed.
Be part of the next generation of African change makers.
Be a part of Engine, Africa's #1 science discovery program. Yay!
We're learning every day.
Mtazamaji popote ulipo, unapokuwa ukitazama Safina Show
inang'oananga sasa hivi. Ungana nami Albanas Mwania, nahodha wa Safina Show, nikutoe ng'ambo ya pili hadi ufuoni. Safina Show, sauti ya matumaini.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's continue with our coverage. Now, Daudi Hani, a destitute student from Thika Rescue Center, has managed to beat all odds by graduating with a bachelor's degree in commerce and accounting from Mount Kenya University. Despite being an orphan, he is joyful that he has achieved his dream. Now, teachers and government officials joined in the celebrations at Thika Rescue Center, terming the win as a great encouragement to the entire destitutes in the country. This story has been produced by Cynthia Nderitu.
Though the journey was bumpy for Daudi, he made a lot of efforts and promised himself that he would emerge victorious as well as help his siblings. He was raised in different rescue centers and finally was transferred to Thika. A After the transfer, Daudi managed to join schools, both primary and secondary schools, which he performed tremendously well, garnering a B- that would see him admitted at the Mount Kenya University, a place where he would then graduate with a second-class upper division.
I never knew that one day I will graduate. I just started pushing, and when I got 400 marks, I just knew I can do it.
The Secretary, Department of Children's Services Shem Nyakutu, joined in the celebrations, terming the achievement as a milestone that will motivate more disadvantaged children to enable them achieve their dreams.
We've gotten 100 million for fencing of all our institutions' land so that they are safe from land grabbers.
Thika MP Alice Ng'ang'a, who was also present, congratulated Daudi, saying he has set a good precedent and broke the record that disadvantaged children can as well make it.
Hadi did not know even who named him. He just found himself at the rescue center. But that one never stopped him to become who he is and who is going to be today. So that's a challenge for all of us. Even if there are so many obstacles and challenges, keep fighting. There's a better tomorrow.
Ng'ang'a, who is the chair Social Protection Services in Parliament, said her ministry was taking priority in uplifting the lives of the less fortunate in the society, saying every child has a right to education and other essential services just like any other. Salma Swaleh, KUTV.
Now, in pursuit of more profits, Miraa farmers in Meru County are now cutting down their Miraa trees, opting for other crops due to poor market prices. Elsewhere in Busia County, sugarcane farmers have been urged to adopt modern technologies in fertilizer application in order to reduce wastage and increase productivity. This story has been produced by Sylvia Anyango.
Sugarcane farmers in Busia have been challenged to embrace modern technologies of fertilizer application that is economic, accurate and uniform to all crops. According to Titus Ondigo, the agriculture officer in charge, this will solve long-term problems in terms of fertilizer management to increase tonnage per acre.
We have brought in this technology to solve most of our long-term problems in terms of fertilizer management. As management, we have suffered huge losses in terms of fertilizer theft.
Lakini kulingana vile nimeona teknolojia imekuja mpya iko rahisi kwa afya ya binadamu. Ndio naizia wakulima wachukue teknolojia ili kitu ya kwanza kumake waka easier, kitu ya pili kwa afya ya binadamu mfanyikazi.
Elsewhere, a section of Miraa farmers in Meru are cutting down Miraa trees, opting for other cash crops like avocado to help them make a living. The farmers have complained about increase of middlemen and tax in the Miraa market, reducing their profit margin. They are now calling upon the government to help them redeem the cultivation of Miraa.
Ilikuwa ngunia moja ilikuwa 1,080, saa hii inatoka 20,015. Ndio tunaomba serikali iweze kuingilia, kwa sababu sijawahi ona kitu kingine ikiteremuka na 75% ni Miraa peke yake. Tunamuomba Miraa yetu iwe soko huru kama zile zingine, kama mananasi, kama bamba, kahawa na bayani.
Meanwhile, Governor Fernandez Barras of Kakamega has flagged off the distribution of drugs essential worth 240 million received from the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority KEMSA to all health facilities in the county. The Level 5 Kakamega General Hospital will receive drugs worth 56 million. Its other facilities receive both pharmaceuticals and non-pharmaceuticals and reagents worth between 10 to 15 million.
Itakuwa inapokea madawa minimum of 15 million na zile kubwa zitakuwa zinapokea madawa of almost 15 million Kenya shillings. So between 10 and 15 million we have a schedule ambayo madawa ziko hapa. Na CGH being the biggest facility we have ambayo ni level 5, the drugs which we are releasing to CGH are worth 56 million Kenya shillings.
In the meantime, Embu medical doctors have issued a 21-day strike notice to the county government upon failure to address the work-related issues.
The county of Embu a notice for strike that will begin beginning on the next 21 days, that's 28th. But at the same time, we are taking the Embu county to court for actually deducting the statutory deductions from the doctors are not limiting to the respective bodies. And that's why we are demanding that as the county is doing its budgeting, they must promote the doctors, they must employ the doctors, and they must employ them in the right terms so that the residents of this county can benefit in the right to health care as enshrined in Article 43 of the Constitution.
The doctors are ready to work but lack environment and resources. Joseph Oyomo, KUTV.
Right, with our story produced by Sylvia Nyango and voiced by Joseph Oyomo, we are taking another short break. We're coming back with sports news. Stay with us.
We are all seeing the impacts of climate change. In Kenya, for example, the frequency of the floods is becoming more and worse. The amount of people and livestock we're losing.
The level we need to go is the level where the normal mwananchi and also the government stakeholders can uptake these solutions.
Those small acts multiplied by millions of us will help make a difference in the world at the end of the day.
It's just a slight behavior change that we need, and you find that it serves us a bit more than you put in. And that's the goal. We want to live a better world than we found. Because at the rate we are going, it's dire.
We will secure the planet for future generations.
Hello everyone, this is the new chapter of Let's Be Fit. I'll be host DiCaplo. I'm here to give you various workouts. I'll be having different trainers. We'll have Zumba classes, we'll have aerobics classes, we'll have box exercise, we'll have...
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
The Bible says, when he spoke, then he spoke a parable to them, that men always ought to pray and not lose heart.
Christ says, I stand in the door and I knock. Whoever hears my voice and opens, I will dwell with him.
Like the moon, I will fade, but like the star, I will rise again. And though I fall, be rest assured that I will rise again.
Go to the hospitals, tell them that God will heal them. Go to the prisons, tell them that they'll be free. Go to the crusades and tell people that Christ is coming, and sooner than the word itself, the second advent is imminent.
What's up, fashionistas? Looking for a show that brings you the latest in the world of fashion, glamour, creativity, and style? Fashion Diaries got you started as we explore street fashion, modeling, runways, red carpet events, and so much more.
Catch me, Ashley Asachi, as we unlock the greatest fashion events. Keep it locked.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Let's take a look at what's happening in the world of sports. Now, Kenya national men's volleyball team of Falme Stars have begun their non-residential training at the historic Nyayo National Stadium in Nairobi to prepare ahead of the African Nations Championship. The provisional squad of 21 players is expected to train for 3 weeks, after which a final squad of 4 players will be selected. Cairo, Egypt will play host for this year's African Nations Championship, which will commence on September 1st to 14 this year. In 2021, Wafalme Stars beat Egypt 3-2 during the edition that was hosted in Rwanda. That brings us to the end of our bulletin tonight. Many thanks indeed for keeping us company. Be sure to join us again tomorrow, Sammy OKELLO and I. My name is Anne Odida, and I'm in the company of Sammy OKELLO, who is our sign language interpreter tonight. Have a good night.